I'm 82. I couldn't get hard for 5 years. Then I found something that changed my life in days. My name is Gerald. I am 82 years old, and I live outside a small town in Oregon, about 40 minutes from the coast, in a house I built with my own hands when I was 34. 10 years ago, if you had told me what my body is capable of today, I would have laughed in your face. Not a happy laugh, the kind a man uses when he doesn't want to cry. Because 10 years ago, at 72, my body had already quit on me. And I had accepted it, the way you accept a leaky roof you can't afford to fix. You just stop going into that room. I owned a hardware store in town for 28 years. I sold lumber and nails and plumbing fittings. I knew how things worked. I could tell you why a pipe bursts in winter and why a foundation cracks when the drainage is wrong. But I could not tell you why my own body had stopped working in the one way that made me feel like a man. Nobody explained that to me. Not the doctors, not the pharmacist, not the pamphlets they handed me in the waiting room. 5 years I lived like that. 5 years of pretending it didn't matter. 5 years of turning off the light and lying there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle, feeling like the house and I were doing the same thing, getting older, getting quieter, getting closer to the day nobody comes through the door anymore. My wife Margaret passed away 6 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. Fast, brutal. After she died, I told myself the reason I had no desire was grief, and maybe some of it was. But the truth is, it had started before she got sick. I just used her death as a reason to stop looking at it. If you're watching this, I think there's a good chance you know this feeling. Not the specifics, the weight of it. The way it sits on your chest when you're alone and there's nothing to distract you from who you've become. I went through it. Same as you. Maybe worse, maybe not. Doesn't matter. What matters is that I found something on the other side, and I didn't find it where anyone told me to look. If you stay with me until the end of this, I'll tell you exactly what changed. Not what a doctor told me, not what I read in a magazine. What I did, what happened in my body, and why I think most men are looking in the wrong place entirely. The answer isn't complicated, but it is the last place most of us think to look. I need to go back to the beginning, because you need to understand how far down I was before you'll believe how far I came back. The first time I noticed something was wrong, really wrong, not just a bad night, was a Tuesday evening in November. I remember it was Tuesday because Margaret and I always watched a show together on Tuesdays. And after the show, she leaned over and put her hand on my leg, the way she used to. That small gesture. Nothing dramatic. And I felt nothing. Not reluctance, not tiredness, nothing.
Like someone had disconnected a wire somewhere inside me, and the signal couldn't get through. I told her I was tired. She said okay. She didn't push. And that was almost worse. The fact that she wasn't surprised. Like she had already noticed and decided not to say anything. That silence between us grew. It wasn't hostile.
It was careful. We were careful with each other, the way people are careful around something fragile. And the fragile thing was me. I went to my doctor, Dr. Chambers. Good man, been seeing me for years. He ran blood work, said my levels were low. Used a word I don't like repeating. He gave me a prescription, little blue tablets. They gave me headaches behind my eyes and made my face flush red like I'd been standing over a furnace. And sometimes they worked, but the working felt mechanical, like jump-starting a car with a dead battery. The engine turns over, but the car doesn't actually want to go anywhere. I tried 3 different prescriptions that year. Tablets, greens, injections. Every time I left his office, I felt smaller than when I walked in. Not because he was cruel, because he was trying, and nothing was working. And the look in his eyes was the same look you see when a mechanic tells you the car isn't worth the repair. After Margaret died, I stopped going altogether. I figured that part of my life was over, and the decent thing to do was accept it quietly. For 2 years, I lived alone in this house, and I didn't touch another person, and nobody touched me, and I told myself that was fine. Then I met Carol. She volunteered at the library in town. She was 68. She had this way of looking at you, like she was really seeing you, not just hearing words. We started having coffee on Saturdays, then lunches, then dinners at her place with a bottle of wine and her dog sleeping on the rug between us. And the closer we got, the more terrified I became. Because I knew there would be a night when the conversation led somewhere else, and I would have to either tell her the truth or make an excuse. And I had run out of excuses years ago. It was a book that changed things. I know that sounds small, but that's how it happened. Carol had loaned me a stack of books. She was always loaning me books. And one of them was about sleep. Not a medical book, a regular book written for regular people about what happens to the body when it sleeps and what happens when it doesn't. I started reading it on a Thursday night because I couldn't sleep, which was ironic. And somewhere around chapter 4, I read something that made me put the book down and stare at the wall for a long time. The book said that the body does almost all of its repair work during deep sleep, not light sleep, the deep kind, where brain waves slow to almost nothing and the body turns inward and starts fixing what's broken. And one of the things it fixes, one of the most important things, is the hormonal system. The body produces the vast majority of its testosterone during a specific phase of deep sleep. Not during the day, not during exercise, at night, in the dark, in silence, during a window that lasts about 90 minutes, usually between midnight and 3 in the morning. And most men over 60 have almost completely lost that window. Not because they're old, because they've destroyed the conditions that make it possible. That hit me hard, because I was one of those men. I hadn't slept well in years. I'd fall asleep in front of the television at 9:30, wake up at midnight, shuffle to bed, lie there until 2, maybe drift off again, wake up at 5 feeling like I hadn't rested at all. That wasn't sleep. That was a body going through the motions of lying down without ever entering the state where repair happens. The picture was so simple, it made me angry. No doctor had ever said this in plain language. I had spent years swallowing pills that forced blood into a place it didn't want to go, when the real problem was that my body had stopped making the chemical that tells the blood to go there in the first place. And it had stopped making it because I had, without knowing it, destroyed the one time of day when production happens. Here is the first thing I changed, and I changed it that same week. I stopped looking at screens after 8 o'clock at night. Television, phone, tablet, all of it, off by 8. The reason is simple. The blue-white light those screens produce goes straight through your eyes into the part of the brain that controls your internal clock. When that light hits at night, the brain thinks it's still daytime. It holds back the sleep chemical, the one that tells your body to start shutting down and entering the deep phase. Without it, you might fall asleep, but you never go deep enough. You skim the surface all night, like a stone skipping across water. The repair window never opens. I felt foolish the first night I did it. 8 o'clock, and I'm sitting in the living room with a lamp on and a book in my lap like it's 1953. But I slept differently that night. Not perfectly, but deeper. And within a week, I was waking up feeling like I had actually rested, not just survived the night. If this is making sense to you, I'd appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button and the like. Not for me, because the men who need to hear this aren't going to find it unless the people who already found it help it reach them. I'm not building a brand. I'm 82 years old.
And I don't know what a brand is. I'm just a man who found something that worked and wants other men to know about it before they run out of time. Now, I have to tell you something I resisted saying for a long time. I'm the kind of man who spent 28 years selling things over a counter.
I saw every overpriced, overpromised product come through my store. The supplements that used to hang by the register, plastic bottles with lightning bolts and muscle men on the label, I used to shake my head at the men who bought them. I thought if something really worked, it wouldn't need to be sold between the beef jerky and the lottery tickets. So, when I started reading about certain natural ingredients that support the deep sleep window and hormonal production, I dismissed it. Same thing in a fancier bottle. I held that opinion for months, past stubbornness into something closer to pride. What broke it wasn't an argument, it was Carol. She'd been reading some of the same things I'd been reading. Because she's like that.
She doesn't just hand you a book, she reads it too. And one evening she said to me, very calmly, Gerald, you changed everything about your sleep and your routine and your habits. You changed things you'd done for 50 years.
But you won't try something that grows in the ground because you once saw a bad label at your own store? Does that make sense to you? It didn't. And I knew it didn't. And she knew I knew. So I found something. A combination of natural ingredients. Not a dozen things thrown together to fill a label, but a few specific ones chosen for specific reasons. Two stood out. One was saw palmetto, a plant that protects the prostate, which I already knew I needed. But what I didn't know was that it helps the body hold on to the testosterone it makes, instead of wasting it by converting it into a different hormone. That conversion happens more and more as a man gets older, and it means even when the body is producing during that deep sleep window, a lot gets lost before it does any good. The other was milk thistle. It supports the liver, the organ responsible for clearing out excess estrogen that builds up in a man's body over time. A clean liver means hormones stay in balance. A sluggish liver means the body is fighting itself. I started taking this combination daily. I didn't expect anything. By that point, I had trained myself not to. But after about 3 weeks, I noticed something one morning I hadn't felt in years. I woke up and I felt warm. Not temperature warm, alive warm. Like there was a current running through me that had been switched off and someone had found the breaker. My hands weren't shaking the way they usually did. My head was clear. And there was something else. A feeling I can only describe as presence. Like I was back inside my own body after years of watching it from the outside. The link is in the description if you want to look at what I found. I'm not asking you to buy anything. I'm telling you what I did. And if you want to see it for yourself, it's there. Here is the second thing I changed, and this one surprised me. I started eating a spoonful of raw honey mixed with a splash of apple cider vinegar about 30 minutes before bed. I know how that sounds, like something your grandmother would tell you. But the reason it works is not folklore. It's blood sugar. When blood sugar drops during the night, which it does for most men who eat dinner at 6 and don't eat again until morning, the body releases a stress hormone. That stress hormone wakes you up, sometimes all the way. Sometimes it just pulls you out of the deep phase without you knowing. Either way, the repair window slams shut. The honey gives the liver a small, steady source of fuel to keep blood sugar stable through the night. The vinegar slows absorption so it doesn't spike and crash. Researchers at a university in Finland studied this exact mechanism and found that men who maintained stable overnight blood sugar had significantly deeper sleep and measurably higher morning testosterone levels. I do this every night now. The honey sits on my counter next to the vinegar. It takes 10 seconds. It costs almost nothing. The third thing was the temperature of the room I sleep in. I used to keep the house at 68, 70 degrees at night. Comfortable. But comfortable is not the same as productive. The body enters its deepest sleep phase when core temperature drops. That's the trigger. If the room is too warm, the body never cools enough to initiate the cascade that leads to slow wave sleep, the kind where hormones are produced and tissue is repaired. I dropped the thermostat to 62. Carol thought I was crazy, but the sleep was different. The kind of different where you wake up and know something happened during the night. Something quiet and mechanical, like a well-maintained engine that ran while you were resting. A study out of the University of South Australia confirmed that a room temperature between 60 and 65 degrees was optimal for deep phase sleep in older adults, and that even a 5-degree increase could reduce time in the deepest phase by nearly a third. The fourth thing was something I had never heard of before, and frankly felt embarrassed doing the first time. Pelvic floor exercises. I know, a man my age doing exercises for muscles he didn't know he had, but those muscles control blood flow to the part of the body we're talking about. They sit at the base of the pelvis, and in younger men, they're strong. In men over 60, they're usually weak, atrophied, forgotten. A clinical trial at the University of the West of England followed a group of men with circulatory issues in that area and found that after 3 months of daily pelvic floor exercises, over 75% reported significant improvement. Not from drugs, not from surgery. From strengthening a muscle nobody told them existed. I do them for 5 minutes every morning, sitting in my chair with my coffee. You tighten the muscles you'd use to stop urinating midstream. Hold for 5 seconds, release for 5 seconds, repeat. Nobody can see you doing it. And the effect is cumulative. The longer you do it, the stronger the response. I want to tell you something that none of what I just described fully explains. Because the habits and the honey and the cold room and the exercises, they matter. They made a real difference. But there may be 30% of why I'm standing here today, at 82, feeling more alive than I did at 70. The other 70% was something I had to face inside myself, and it's the part most men never talk about. After Margaret died, I didn't just lose my wife, I lost my reason. She was the one who needed me. She was the one who asked me to fix the screen door and check the furnace filter. When she was gone, the house didn't just get quiet. I got quiet. I stopped caring about the yard. I ate cereal for dinner 3 nights a week. I told myself this was grief, and grief was normal, and eventually it would pass. But it didn't pass. Because it wasn't just grief. It was the slow biological shutdown of a body that no longer believed it had a purpose. And I'm not saying that poetically. I mean it as fact. When a man loses his sense of being needed, when there is no one to provide for, no task that requires his strength, the body reads that signal the same way it reads a famine. It dials down everything that costs energy: desire, drive, circulation, hormonal production. It becomes the biological equivalent of a store that's closing. The lights go dim, the shelves empty, the sign stays up, but nobody's inside. I didn't know I was doing this to myself. I thought I was resting. I was decaying. The change started small. Carol asked me to help her paint her kitchen. Not a big job. 2 days, maybe 3. I said yes because I didn't want to say no to her face. And on the second day, standing on a ladder with a brush in my hand and Carol handing me tape from below and her dog watching us from the doorway, I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years. I felt useful. Not in an abstract way, in a body way. Like a switch had been turned back on somewhere in my gut. I started saying yes to things. I helped a neighbor with his porch railing. I went to the Saturday farmer's market and talked to people instead of buying eggs and leaving. I made plans for the garden again. And every time I did something that put me back in the world, I could feel my body responding. My sleep improved, my energy came back, and the desire I thought was gone permanently, started returning. Not all at once, in pieces, like a house where someone is going room to room turning the lights back on. There is a direct connection between feeling needed and the body's chemistry. When you have purpose, the stress hormone drops. When the stress hormone drops, the hormones that make a man vital rise. When those hormones rise, everything downstream improves: circulation, sleep quality, mood, and yes, function. It's not a metaphor. It's a chain of events that happens in the blood and the brain. And it starts with one thing: believing that tomorrow matters. If you're sitting there right now and you feel like the world has moved on without you, I need you to hear me. That feeling is not permanent. It feels permanent. It has felt permanent for me for years. But it's a signal, not a sentence. And the body responds to new signals faster than you think. Here's what I'd ask you to do today. Before the honey, before the cold room, before any of it, find one thing that puts you in contact with another human being who needs something you can give. Not money, effort, presence. Call someone who hasn't heard from you in a while. Help someone carry something. Show up somewhere you stopped showing up. And pay attention to what happens in your body. Not your head, your body. That's the signal. My name is Gerald. I'm 82. I live in Oregon in a house I built with my hands. I lost my wife. I lost myself. I spent 5 years thinking the man I used to be was gone. I was wrong. He was still there, waiting for a reason to come back and for the right conditions to let him. Tell me in the comments, do you still believe there's a solution, or have you given up trying to understand what happened to your body? I'm not asking to judge. I'm asking because I gave up too. And giving up almost cost me everything. I mentioned the sleep, the honey, the cold room, the exercises. I meant every word. And I mentioned the combination I found, the one in the description. They work together. The habits rebuild the conditions. The supplement supports what the body is trying to do during those conditions. Neither one replaces the other. You need both, the way a fire needs both wood and air. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. Go there. Read what's in it. Take your time. Nobody's rushing you. But I will say this. The body has a window. I don't know how long yours stays open. I only know I almost missed mine. Every relationship that still has a chance of being what it could be, every morning that could still feel different, has a shelf life. Not because the body gives up, because the heart does. And once the heart decides it's too late, the body follows. I watched it happen to men I grew up with. Good men. Men who deserved better. Men who waited 1 year too long. Don't be that man. Not today.